Value Proposition, prepared for and presented at the 2016 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
The first thing I want to tell you is that nobody knows everything there is to know about this. If you talk to 10 people, you'll get 10 answers, but they're all similar. So some of the stuff I'm going to share with you tonight is general principles and hopefully some encouragement and food for thought. But don't be afraid to do additional reading, but don't get overwhelmed by it. You'll run into so much, you'll get spun. And just know that these are all strategies. They're simple ideas on how to connect your companies with your consumers. They're statements that are there just like a business plan, as is a guide to keep you on track. A value proposition or a positioning is a strategic guide to keep you on track. Hopefully it lasts more than a few weeks, but it's not something that you have to live by for a generation. It's something to focus your thoughts and help you get along. I'm going to click, because I bet I'm getting ahead of my slides. I'm good at that. What is a value proposition? How many of you have heard this phrase before or are familiar with it?
And they're using the business model canvas so that you know.
The what?
The business model canvas.
Okay, good. I'm not that familiar with that, but that's great. Well, good. You guys are generally familiar. I liked this definition. You'll see slightly different ones, like I said. But what I like about this one is that it's got the positioning statement baked into the value proposition. Some people think those are very distinct, and depending on how you write them, they can be. I like to have those two things come as close together as possible because they're basically two sides of the same coin. I'll just read it to you real quick. A value proposition is a positioning statement that explains what benefit you provide for who and how you do it uniquely well. It describes your target buyer, the problem you solve, and why you're distinctly better than the alternatives. There's a lot in that paragraph, so I'm going to leave it up there for a second so you guys can stare at it and sort of soak it all in. The key thing to keep in mind here that I think you'll see running through the presentation tonight is your target market and unique differentiation and unique benefits. If you are doing something that's as common as sliced bread and just as available and a commodity, then you're probably going to have a hard time getting a startup off the ground. If you don't know who you're doing what you do so wonderfully for, you're going to have a hard time marketing that startup and making sure that your products really fit their needs. Related to that is positioning, and this is one of those things that I'm going to indulge in advertising account planner nerdiness here. We make a big difference between what you do when you write your value proposition or your plan and what happens in the audience's mind, whether that's a consumer or a B2B target audience. Positioning is something that people think. It's how they think about you relative to the competition. If I like Coke and I think it's sweeter and more delicious and more all-American wholesome than Pepsi, then I've positioned Coke against Pepsi in my mind. If you think the opposite, then you have a different sense of Pepsi. What they might be trying to do out there in the marketplace is get more people to think like the Team Pepsi than people who think like Team Coke. So at any given time, you can have a product that's got multiple positionings out there in consumers' minds, but they're working towards creating a unified one. That's where the value proposition exercise comes in, and that's the work you're trying to do strategically, is get people to place you mentally in their mental models and their maps of the world where you want them to put you versus where they put you, because they're going to put you somewhere. If you don't position yourself or help people understand where you belong, they'll slot you, trust me. So yeah, it's a strategic exercise and it's a tool for focusing. It's not something that you're held captive by. Don't be afraid of these things. So the classic form, does this look familiar to folks? I'm seeing some nods. If it doesn't, it's right now in this context the world's most ugly sentence. But hopefully if we've got some time, and I don't plan to talk the whole time down, so we should have some time. We can take a couple of volunteers and take their current positioning statements or their elevator pitch or their Twitter bio or however they think they've nailed what they're all about and try to work on it in this kind of format and see what that feels like as a group. So what the classic form is, and I've got this in here a couple of places just so I don't have to keep going back for it, is for your target audience, brand X, meaning you or your company or whatever you're making, is the category or competitive frame. So if for men 18 to 49 who love to go to 7-Eleven on a Saturday, Coca-Cola is the soft drink. That's how that kind of sentence works. And then you need a differentiator. And this is where you also should stretch and pull and challenge yourself to really be different. So if you say that for men 18 to 34 who love to go to 7-Eleven on a hot Sunday day, on a hot weekend day, Coca-Cola is the soft drink. That's pretty kind of broad and flat, but you can leave it there. And if the differentiator is only has 10 calories, in the 70s, that was a big innovation. Today, that's not enough to really stand out in the market. Or if you said is the only one that comes with, infused blueberry juice or something, you really need to think about what's really making it different. Right now, the things that are sort of standing out in that category are different sort of ingredients. Does it give you energy without caffeine? Is it vitamin infused? Is it coming from water from the Himalayas? All those kinds of things are out there because that's how much people are having to just struggle to stand apart from the competition and be different. And then reasons to believe. And this is where, if you were going to map this against other versions of value proposition statements, we'd be looking for not just why you should believe it, but why those belief statements generate value for you. And those things are getting into the details, whether or not it's, if it's to the trade, keeping the Coke analogy, if it is consistent across all plants and certified syrups, all of that kind of stuff. Preferred by 9 out of 10 customers, recognized globally. Those are different kinds of things that might be your reasons to believe underneath a value proposition. I'm going to probably spend the least amount of time on that today because if you can nail the top part and you have the proof of it that makes it true, the bottom part's usually the easier part for folks. Unfortunately, most people build from the bottom up. They list all their features and they don't really know what their big story is and who their real audience is. So I promised you sort of 7 steps to a stronger value proposition. I think I titled this. Step 1, identify your competitive frame. The key question here is what business are you really in? And be ruthlessly honest with yourself about this. And you might be like, well, obviously I'm a tech startup, or I'm a new kind of salad dressing maker, or a clothing designer, or whatever you guys happen to do. But you'd be surprised how many people think they're in one business, and when you really, really poke at it, they're in another one. For example, Facebook. What business are they in? They probably, you could argue, are in one of 25. But just for argument's sake, and most of the stuff I'm going to say tonight is debatable. Are they an advertising company, or are they an entertainment business? I personally think they're an advertising company, but a lot of people think, oh, well, social media, entertainment, public, all that kind of stuff. Is UPS in the shipping business, or are they in the logistics business? You guys should know that one if you're watching their commercials. They've redeclared themselves in the logistics business, but just from knowing some people who work in that, they got there because they realized that that's where their advantage was. There were lots of people who shipped packages overnight by ground for a fair price. Not a lot of people had the back-end capabilities they had, so they realized that what they're really doing is logistics. I don't know how that campaign's doing, but I did like the pivot, which is to reestablish and reframe where they're playing. A famous sort of adage that my boss likes to use a lot is, are you making nails or are you making 1/4-inch holes? If you realize that what people are really asking you for is the hole in the wall, you won't define yourself as a nail manufacturer. Just for fun, before I show you my next little reveal quote, if I threw out a brand like McDonald's, what business are they in? Fast food, restaurants. The guy who founded it asked the same question of a group of folks like you, and he said, no, my business is real estate. And if you look at places like Motley Fool or Seeking Alpha or a lot of the different sort of investment sites, they too will point out that the value of McDonald's, the value they bring to the marketplace, their biggest asset is their real estate portfolio. It's not two all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese. It's a part of it. That's what makes people come. That's what adds additional value to their portfolio. But early in their evolution, when they were having a hard time making money, when their business model was not working, they realized that they had franchisees who couldn't buy this real estate, and that over time, quickly actually, but it took maybe a couple of decades, they have nailed how to identify a location that will do well for McDonald's. Get in there early, buy it up, develop it, and then lease it back to a franchisee who pays them a commission on it or a percentage of sales. They are the best hustle when it comes to realizing what business they're in. That's why the food innovation, which I know they're committed to right now, is just one part of the business. You might wonder, why did it take them so long to think about doing things to the menu? Because they're appealing to convenience and consistency. When they make a menu change, it's really considered. But I bet in the boardroom, a big part of that is, about realizing that they're not in the business of innovating on the food side as much as they're in the business of being in real estate. Yes?
But is that more of an internal value proposition though?
Value propositions are internal.
Oh, but you were saying though with was it FedEx or UPS, so that their campaign though mirrors their internal value proposition, but at McDonald's value proposition of real estate wouldn't.
Exactly. There's a difference between a creative brief that would inform your advertising and a business strategy document similar to a value proposition or a positioning statement that helps you define what you are. What you are may not necessarily be expressed to your end consumer that way, but I bet you at franchise meetings, they do talk about this aspect of it. So when you have multiple audiences and you're a complicated company like that, sure, there's probably definitely a value proposition to the end consumer. But I think at the stage of development you guys are in, which comes to founding companies, when they're deciding what to spend money on, should we get into tacos? I bet they probably have an easier time saying no if they realize where their value is really, really coming from. So that's where that's coming from. If you can make them match up nicely, you're into something. And I would say, and I don't know, I don't work on that account. I would love to, but I don't work on that account. But I would say that that's probably some tension out there in that what their real business is versus how America sees them are two different things. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But I think some of these things are good just as thought experiments as well, which is, what if they did? What if they did just say, wherever you need one, right around every corner, I like that brand for that. You can go. I once found a McDonald's in Amsterdam. I've seen them in China. And guess what? The burgers taste the same everywhere. It's wonderful. Number 2, make sure there's a benefit. And this one just broke this weekend. How many of you guys have heard about the spectacles? She has. Anybody else? Oh yeah, everybody's paying attention to the tech news. Where's Nikki? Did she perhaps get the printouts?
They're printing on 16 pages because of the graphics. So
Oh, God.
I can email them to everybody.
Yeah, we don't need 16 pages. Tell her to stop printing and killing the trees.
We can go down that road.
Good. Well, I have a link in here that I can get to.
And we'll send it to everybody too.
Okay. Snap spectacles, and it's called, and the brand Snap now. They dropped the chat too. They've relaunched. Now Snapchat is called Snap. Everybody familiar with Snapchat? Okay. Anybody on Snapchat? Okay. That's because I've been on it. I got off it. I need to get back on it again because they've evolved it. But it doesn't have a lot of users. So the fact that there are only a handful of people here who use it, I think is not surprising, but something to keep in mind for this product. These are sunglasses that let you record 10 seconds to 30 seconds of video, sync it with your phone, and then upload it to Snapchat, or Snap as they're calling it now. These specs cost $130, and the article that there's a link to in here goes on for a couple of pages, really kind of unpacking that. Is there a benefit there? Does anybody think of any? I know because I read the thing, but why is this good? Why? Yeah.
Well, isn't it because they're, instead of being just an app, they're pivoting to like a
That's good for them, but what's the benefit to the user?
Well, that too, because it's more control, I guess, by the user. 'Cause it's,
Which is one way to look at it, but I thought TechCrunch did a good job sort of arguing both sides. The challenges are, do we need this? We've got a camera in our hand.
I think Google Glass proved we don't need it.
Google Glass, they mentioned that one as well, which is it was positioned as geeky, it was awkward, it was creepy. This is a little hipper, but it's still geeky and could be creepy. Yes?
But devil's advocate, we used to think, well, we have an email client on our phone. Why would we need it on a wristwatch? But
I still
a
don't.
lot of people, but a lot of people do have wristwatch email and notifications because it's easier and more convenient. So arguably, this could be, I don't know anything about the market, but maybe it's easier just to like have a candid video if you're not holding something in the face.
And they brought that up. You guys are already half writing this article. They brought that up too, which is with live casting, when I do this, I'm interrupting our interaction. Now I can't see your face. If I thought this was just this profound moment and I wanted to catch it, I could just, and you would see a little light go on. And then they brought up a possible negative to that, which is, oh, she just started recording me. Yes?
So I really, as soon as I saw it, I thought of my daughter, and then I said, oh, 130, that's probably half of what I would spend on her on Christmas. So, and then she's the snapper, right? And this is totally, I think, as soon as she comes across this will be what she has for Christmas.
So you think that the market for this is younger people?
It's all younger people. I mean, all her friends do Snapchat.
Yep. And so if you're on it all the time, you know, if they snap like I tweet, then yeah, they probably might be making little videos all over the place. Anybody else see the benefits or the potential pitfalls of this product?
Maybe people would.
Go ahead.
Maybe people would feel more candid because you don't actually know someone on the phone watching.
It could be. It's a little bit more natural than. Somebody in the back?
I think another benefit is just the cool factor, and people just, it shows people that you have disposable income to buy something so silly.
It does look much better than Google Glass. Google Glass was trying to kill stuff and looked like crap. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would be somewhat invasive, though. You don't see somebody wearing that around, at a party or out. You don't know where are they at video? What do they video?
And that, who?
The NSA is going to.
Oh yeah, for sure they are. They probably already have it, the NSA. But that was one of the things they brought up as well, which is Snapchat's going to have to, or Snap is going to have to help people navigate the social norms of this. This is a different kind of interaction, both in person and digitally, but arguably to me, much more in person, which is, I might be taking your picture when I take this position. I wasn't, but you immediately got that. but I mean, this is a little stealth, and somebody's going to hack how to turn the light off. But you guys are doing it naturally, which isn't surprising because you're entrepreneurs, the kind of stuff that I'm sure their product team did. But it still feels like, and the reason it's getting so much ink is this one's a stretch. This one's either going to be a winner, a bridge product, meaning it sort of wins, it sort of loses, fades, and something bigger and better comes along, or a colossal loser. And for their sakes, I hope they win. But
Would you have done one at a time? Like kept it as Snapchat, tested the new product launch, see if that goes, and then go to Snap if that goes?
not if they're going all in. Plus they're getting attention for the one with the launch of the other. So, I mean, that's more of a PR question. It didn't bother me to go from Snapchat to Snap. That felt snappy. And I like the use of the word spectacles because that has an old-fashioned, traditional kind of connotations with this new wave thing that made it a little less scary for people like me who are like, so I don't know. Plus, then I have prescription, so my thought was, well, can you do those with bifocals? But we'll see. So make sure there's a benefit. They've got a lot going on in here, and the risk is that the market will decide what the benefit is, and they may not decide on the one that they were counting on. It also might be all the right stuff packaged just so for the right, teen heavy Snapchat market. and take off like wildfire. We'll see. Think hard about the target audience. Who's going to use this product, and why are they going to use this product? And do people like this really exist in the world? Like, do you know people like this? Are there lots of them? And don't talk yourself into it. One of these products appealed to consumers, and the other three were colossal historic failures that show up repeatedly on big product flop websites. I was looking into this for you guys yesterday. On the right, you have the Segway. Is it Segway or Sedgway? Segway. Still in use, but not nearly the personal consumer transportation device people thought it was going to be. They were expecting hundreds of thousands of units. They sold 2,000 or so in the first year. Right now you have some police, some warehouse users, and some tour companies using them. That's the application. It's a small niche B2B product that was supposed to take the world and become the next, bigger than the motorcycle or something. I can't remember the press at the time. Then you have New Coke, which books have been written about this. They did their market research. I'm a market researcher. I mean, you know, they did their market research. They taste tested it. It tasted better. It was sweeter. It had a better sweetener in it. They updated the name. People didn't call it Coca-Cola. People called it Coke. They launched this thing in the 80s. It hit the market not with a thud, but with a revolution. Americans said no. No, 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 no. What Coke didn't realize was that people don't drink Coke because how it tastes. I've seen studies at conferences that show that if you take two colas and mask them and tell people that Coke, that beverage A is Coke, statistically, people will say it tastes better. It's about the brand associations. And after they pulled this from the market, in the next generation or two, you saw them go back to that. The curved bottle, the script, not changing the name, calling it classic. What they realized is that, yes, you're selling syrup to bottlers who sell fizzy water with 140 calories, but what you're really selling is a memory and a mood and a culture. And what people reacted to with New Coke wasn't that they dared change the recipe per se. The recipe was proven across the United States in repeated market tests to be better objectively. What they didn't realize that when you told people you did that, you messed with their memories. You messed with their sense of childhood. You messed with what America tastes like. What are you doing? That didn't work because people didn't understand the target market. You know, you can put them in a room and ask them the right questions and get the right answer, but there was something else going on there. Yes?
Is that different now, though, with all the technology and we have to update stuff so much? Like on our phones and like Facebook and with technology update, it seems like back in the 70s, things didn't get probably updated quite as frequently, whereas now they're constantly, like, Windows is a new version every year, Mac is a new version every year.
I think it depends on what it is. So I think for things that you expect to repeatedly update or be in constant beta, yes. But then for things that we have fewer and fewer things in the culture that are immutable, that don't change. If all of a sudden, you know, somebody came out and cast Santa Claus as a woman, which I, as a feminist, think would be great, but it's like, no, that's not what Santa Claus looks like. Santa Claus is not a size 8, you know, middle-aged woman. He's just, you know, hi, Internet. And why would that bother people so much? It would bother them because of everything that they think they know to be true in the world. And so when you're dealing with something that becomes sort of bigger than itself, which Coke had become, which is great, or if you're dealing with a product that is playing in a part of the culture or in society or with a target market that has very strong beliefs about that product. My team at work makes fun of me because apparently there's been research that has been published without fail repeatedly for the last 3 years that you're not supposed to wash your chicken before you cook it. I saw all the Southern cooks go, what? No, you're not. The CDC, the health people, Julia Child, Today Show, and I told my sister that, and she's like, you know, and it's all of the information doesn't change the fact that that cooking is such a handed down ritual. If that's wrong, my mom's wrong, and my grandma's wrong, and her mom's wrong too. So that can't be wrong. Yes.
So Coke didn't realize their position in the marketplace until this failed?
They didn't realize that part of it.
But that's it. That's their value proposition.
Now.
But so, because it's interesting because that was created, which is a significant value proposition, but almost by accident it was created
Yeah.
by society.
Like I think they knew, they had some of that. I mean, it's like Budweiser, Americana, Coca-Cola, Americana. But in the 80s, they were fighting a cola war with Pepsi.
Yeah, right.
So it wasn't, yeah, if they hadn't fixed this happy accident, it's kind of like how Tylenol got made with the poisoning scare. Their quick response to it, you know, they almost killed the Coca-Cola. But yeah, you're right, that by making this move, which was bold, but I don't think they realized it was as risky as it was, they did refine and probably discover an aspect of their value prop that they didn't realize was there. And I don't know if it would happen today, to the earlier question.
So what's Pepsi's value proposition?
God only knows. No, I don't. I think Pepsi tastes better. I don't know. It's probably somewhere in there. That's the difference when you get real close. There isn't a lot of difference functionally between those two.
Right, because I always thought Coke ads were just brand awareness. I didn't think they were selling anything other than just Coke. Coke could just continue to remind you of the product.
They are selling brand awareness, but they're also selling a culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Pepsi was like, we're the choice of a new generation. Then they did the celebrities. I couldn't tell you what they're doing right. Oh, then they did the neat social thing where people could upvote charities. I'm not quite sure what they're doing now, but I don't think that if you went out there and if they were debating tonight and America had to vote for one, I think that Coke would probably win. Was somebody else had a question over here?
I was just going to say that they've been investing in culture a long time, right? The Santa Claus image you referenced earlier, I think, was partially invented by Coke.
Exactly. Yep.
And
Right here in St. Louis.
It's that part of the memory reinforced. I mean, maybe it was by accident or maybe not, but it's yeah, I think it's real key to understand who their target market is.
Yep.
I think maybe Pepsi is just regionally the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not as successfully nationally.
I agree. And once you realize that your differentiator is America's childhood and ongoing memories, then you do feed them. You do Christmas. You don't say, well, we shouldn't spend. No. The only thing you got that makes you really different is this feeling. You have to renew it. Yes?
I just actually thought of something. I realized that some of this, what you're talking about, couldn't it be strategy? Because like when they move into the bars, for
Yep.
example, they'll say you can't carry any of our product unless you sign a contract saying that. So it pushes Pepsi out because so they're like, we want this soda, we want that soda. So
Yep.
a lot of it, I think, has to do with that strategy of contracting and saying.
And I think, I don't know for sure, but I think Pepsi's better in arenas and movie theaters and fast food, with, you know, as far as having those contracts, to your very point. So they may have decided to go trade or be the regional. If you don't like that, you'll like us. You know, if it's not available on your flight, will you drink it kind of option. This one I love. Coors Rocky Mountain Spring Water. Bottled water from Coors. Right, that's what the market said. This is what happens when operationally you have some equities that you could do something with. They did no bottling beverages. They do have equity in this fresh, fancy water. They can put water in a bottle easier than it is to put beer. So they thought, well, people are buying spring water, and we have equity in Rocky Mountain water. And it's easy for us. We'll make a scat amount of money. Let's put a label on it and send it out. People freaked out. They didn't know if it was alcoholic. They didn't and it just didn't work for all the reasons everybody laughed. The reason I use that one is make sure that you don't fall into that trap where, I got these things.
They call it for babies. The only other mistake is that they put a marketing for babies.
Yeah, exactly. Well, beer brands used to do that. They would say that it's for babies and good health. It was a healthy drink for a minute there. And then the pet rock. You guys have probably already guessed that of the 4 brands up here, the one that was an initial success and sold way beyond their founder's expectation was the pet rock. The other 3 are considered marketing failures and quickly exited the market. So did the pet rock because it was also a fad. But the point here is, why would millions of people buy a pet rock? And because it's kitschy and it's funny and it had a book and you didn't have to walk it or feed it. The more I talk about it, I kind of want one. But then once you have one, you don't need another one. So then sales taper off. Now, if they'd come up with a fashion line of little, a family, kind of like the Bratz dolls or something of rocks, they probably could have kept it going. But, the guy cashed out and he's rich and I'm not. So think about those kinds of things. And this has been a great discussion. I'm glad you guys are not leaving me out here talking by myself. Don't delude yourself. Sort of building on that previous slide, identify real consumer needs and wants. Do they really need it? Do they really want it? Not just benefits that fit your hopes and what you think you want to do. That's not enough. That's a good starting point, but then make sure you turn it around to the consumer or to your B2B target or to your digital user, or however you want to think about the people you need to influence. Unless you can create a need and generate enthusiasm, manufacture desire. But then you're talking about the Apples of the world that made everybody want an iPod and download iTunes, which I never could get to work smoothly, and then ditch our extensive CD collections. I have bought the same Bon Jovi album 5 times in my life. But we all did it. We're like, yeah, had to have it. Because they were selling, reselling what stuff that you already had, but they made it fun, and they made it sexy, and they made it hip, they made it easy. They blew a hole in the album. Oh, I can just buy that one song. I don't need to get all the other stuff. And before you know it, people bought into this, and there was this desire for it. And then they seamlessly took that, oh, you need another iPod? Hey, how about we put a phone on it? And the rest is history. But you have to have the right mix of target audience and utility for that.
So I'm thinking about, there's this webcomic called XKCD, and there was this one specific panel that was basically talking about how there's 21 different flavors of jelly beans, and if you do enough data on enough sort of cohorts of a product, then eventually you're going to find one that's statistically significant for something.
Yep.
Like where if you look at all of them in aggregate, then there's no health benefit, but maybe just by some sort of statistical like unlikelihood, the green ones are good for reducing cancer or something. But like it's not like the change is very significant. But okay, so if you stare at something long enough, you can find whatever conclusion you want, arguably, right? So I'm curious about you in your line of work, how you sort of check against that, like proactively.
Well, usually by the time we get it, somebody's already stared at it and sort of made it. So we get to just be like the judges on The Voice. How many of you guys watched that show? That was, and just decide whether we're going to buzz in or buzz out, as far as, not that we can reject the product, but we are in a judging mode. So a client will come to us and they've baked it. It's got a name usually, it's got some packaging, it's got a price point, and a little working of this is what it is. And we actually just did a session like this with one of our clients where they weren't seeing the results they wanted out of it. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but I'll tell you the story behind it. They loved the campaign we did. It wasn't moving the needle fast enough on the metrics, their top line health and lower level sales. And so we sat there and we told them what we've been telling them for years, which is, why is this better? you know, and they told us, I'm like, yeah, that's not really hard enough, not crisp enough. It doesn't have any elbows. I can't say it really quickly in a sentence. It takes a paragraph to explain, why is this better? Why are you the one to pick for these people versus all the other options? And they're in a mature, crowded category. There are at least 30 other A+ rated brands in their category that can do what they do, not as well, but getting it explained in a way that you could put in an advertisement or even a brochure that their target is people like you. It's small business owners that, you know, your eyes would glaze over if we got into the details of things. And I do a lot of work in insurance and in telecom and healthcare. I mean, think about these categories. And so they face that challenge, and sometimes they'll come up with something, and we pushed. And it wasn't just me and them, it was like a whole 15 people in the room. And we kicked it, we stretched it, we said, what if we did that? What if we focused on a detail of it? That's what you have to do with it, because you're gonna have that. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go out there and actually be the best. No, you can be smarter. You can have something that's pretty much the same as the other 15 guys who are trying to do the same thing and just explain it better. Be sharper on your market and get there first. Yes?
So is this about language, or should you be doing validation?
It's about both. I think some of it's language, but it's not language just to sit on a wall. It's language to articulate an idea. So this is an old campaign. I like to pick things that people are familiar with. But if at the time it was for music lovers and fun, fashionable, sexy people, that's language. But they really were targeting music lovers and fun, fashionable, sexy people, because those are also influencers. And so you can say, we get those people to do it. The people who have the best parties, the people who give advice on what music to buy, the concert goers, and they come to the office, and there's always that one guy. I remember when the iPod came out, and I just started at Rogers Townsend. It was like 2001-ish or 2 that it came out, and you know, one creative guy came with that brick-sized first edition one and put it on his desk just so, and everybody, whoa, what's that? But because of who had it, that also made it cool. It wasn't just what it was. It was who had it, and did you want to be like him, and what was he getting out of it, and what did he say about it, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that by declaring that you want the cool, sexy, hip people who you know, go to festivals and influence other people's musical tastes, if you actually target them, you have the chance to grow a market like Apple did there. These are all sort of building on the same sort of themes, so hopefully they're not feeling redundant. This one is about differentiation. It's best to be first. If you can be the first, you know, digital music player, that's an advantage, and different. Because one of the things is that being first is one of those things that it feels really, really good. It does give you an advantage. You can exploit it, but if it's a really good idea, a bunch of other followers are going to come in there. So when you have the floor, you want to say why you're different. Now they may come in and say, me too, me too, me too, me too, but you got there first. So the first brand to establish that position in people's brains can be yours. And then you want to build a brand that can withstand competition and withering differentiation. Who was it who asked what was the Pepsi? I think it was you. I don't know, but they're big enough now that it almost doesn't matter. You know, it'd be better for them if we were as sharp about what Pepsi is about as we are as what Coke is about. But I'm seeing a lot of millennials drinking this LaCroix. You know, they're slowly just everywhere. Have you guys ever had that brand? Well, the one back there, you'll see it. They're like these little sort of fancy, not too soda pops. They are, but I don't think they even declare themselves soda pop. But what can often happen is that there's a distinction without a difference, and the only thing you're left with is your brand. And that's okay. I'd rather be Coke sitting there snickering about the fact that there are 3 microns of flavor profile difference between me and Pepsi than be Pepsi. And then also keep in mind that differentiation isn't just about your product's features and benefits or any of that type of stuff. It also comes with, we've been talking about this a lot, the user attitude, the experience around it, the culture, who uses it. Was it you who said Google Glass died because of who the first users were? That matters. The partners and products around it. Part of why Apple succeeded was the ecosystem that it built, which is funny that I said that because I'm going to diss that word later. But they did with the partners and the music industry and all these different things, and then you were just locked in. I mean, the amount of investment in this platform I've made I get curious about Android every now and again. Then they catch fire, but you know, but you know, you're like, that's curious, but then I have to. No, I think I'll stay over here. That's another way to differentiate yourself. Yes?
You made me think of an amazing question that I have right now because I'm still trying to figure this out. So if you have your target audience, your target market, but your industry is a part of an ecosystem that is very it's almost it's not, it touches on so many different aspects that you can't really be good at what you do, even focusing on that target market without considering all these other players in the ecosystem. Do you have advice to what would be the best way to go about figuring out what part of that ecosystem you should, other than your target market, focus on?
I need to know more specifics, but if you don't mind, we can use your idea as an example, because I was going to ask for some volunteers to do this with. So we're almost there. Oh, okay. I'll hurry up so we get time to work on your problem. Quick quote: all progress occurs because people dare to be different. Some fancy writer named Harry Milner wrote that. But I do think that, don't be afraid to be different. And the more different you are, the more, it's a big opportunity. People will definitely know who you are if you're DeLorean. Now, if you go that far, you also may not get a lot of the market. How are they different? I'm going to skip this one, but this was going to be an exercise in having y'all debate differentiation, but I think you're there because of the conversation we've had earlier. But this is a good parlor game if you guys want to play it over coffee with each other, which is when you're talking about differentiation and how people are different, it's sometimes good to take a couple of brands, Coke and Pepsi, Apple and Android, and debate it. And if you can't declare it clearly and simply, then there may not be enough differentiation. And one of those brands is probably softening or not as strong as they may appear to be. Use emotion effectively. In about a couple hours, all of America, apparently a Super Bowl-sized audience, is going to tune in, and they're going to be all up in their feels. They're going to hate one of these people. Motion is all over this election. And you could argue, it's been argued, that the reason Donald Trump is a Republican nominee is that he spoke clearly and simply and harnessed emotion and knew who his target audience was. Now, I'm not voting for him, but strategically, that is what he did. And you have to, as strategists and as business people and just observers of the culture, you gotta look at that and say, now, how did he do that? And you go back 18 months, and he was leaving The Apprentice, and now he's the Republican nominee about to debate Hillary Clinton. On the other hand, you have Hillary, who is equally hated by a different group of people, who is being told, and it's all over the news for the last couple of weeks, that she has got to not be wooden tonight. So both of them have a value proposition. If you've been following this at all, you know that what Trump stands for and what he's going to do, and what Hillary stands for and what she's going to do. And absolutely nobody cares. Think about that. It's both frightening, but also instructive, which is you can have all the best features and benefits, best pricing, and get the emotion wrong, or not be emotional enough, or tap the wrong one, and it's all for naught. She may have the better plan on this. He may have a better plan on that. they're going to talk about both of those things, and afterwards we're all going to get 22-minute summaries about who coughed, who looked at their watch, who was bored, who got in whose face, who was strong, who insulted who looked confident, who looked presidential. What are those? Those are emotional pieces of the value proposition of which candidate would be a better president. And I put them up on purpose because I know that it gets people emotional. Just the sight of whichever one you do or don't like. And think about if that was activated for your brand.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Are we on this one?
Read Peter Thiel and some of the other entrepreneur avant-garde, and they talk a lot about market differentiation, and there's like this famous saying that Peter Thiel says, it says, I don't understand brands. I get that it's a compelling force, it's an Apple, but as a startup, I'm not sure how you do the brand thing, unless maybe you're the first to go to market. I'm not quoting him specifically,
Right.
but something along those lines. And what I think about in my company is that I do really care about the branding, and I think it's going to be important in the differentiation in the market. But I don't know how to do. I don't know if that requires a sizable investment in marketing. Or
No, I don't think it does. I think it requires a sizable investment in thinking, so that when you start to grow, you don't have to then go back and fix the brand. Apple was Apple before it was Apple. Anybody else have a question on this one? Yep.
Yeah, that was actually my question as well. If you create a brand, but you really don't even have a product. You create this brand.
I'm a brand nerd, so I argue they go hand in hand. If you have a product that doesn't stand for something, isn't for someone, doesn't make someone feel passionate, then you don't really have a product. Therefore, you might as well make a brand while you're making your product.
You have 5 minutes.
I gotta move on. I got 5 minutes. The last one, the last point. Use simple language. Avoid cliches, jargon, or fuzzy marketing speak in your strategy. If you Google like BS generators, there's a whole bunch of them. And you can say, make BS, and it'll pop up some stuff and have a laugh and avoid that kind of stuff. And some of my favorites that I don't like, disrupt, curate, synergize, optimize. If you can't say it and explain it to your 6-year-old nephew, you haven't said it simply enough. And that's not to say that your investors or your tech peers might want to hear you razzle-dazzle the latest phrases, but the risk, and I'm talking as a writer and a strategist here, the risk is that you will convince yourself that something is true when it's truthy. You'll convince yourself that something is solid when it's a little squishy because you've got seamless end-to-end integration with an ecosystem full of partnerships that, what? So that is my last bit of advice, which if you write simply and clearly, writing is thinking. So if you write simply and clearly, you're thinking simply and clearly, and the strongest ideas are simple. You can add the complexity later, because that's all the fanciness, but simply said, the Snap Spectacles are glasses you can record video on. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in there, but if you can't say what it is simply, then you're going to have a hard time, just go back to that. You can't overcomplicate it, even in a niche, even when you're dealing with business peers. Positive affirmation for you guys. You can write a great value proposition. This is not hard. It just takes some homework, some thinking, and some editing. So write it down, first thought, best thought, come back to it, look at it, simplify your words, strike your buzzwords, and just keep refining. And then reach out to people who know something about it if you're not sure. I was going to say let's try to write one, but am I out of time?
We've got 4 minutes, and if you're nice to Antoinette, she might let you.
Oh, I love Crystal. She can talk all day.
Oh, yay! Well, I'm interested in whatever your secret sauce product is. What are you making?
It's a sustainability platform for service providers to be able to, which now you have me nervous because I'm trying to think simple and fast and get it out there.
Yep.
for service providers to be able to track and monitor their environmental performance, corporate environmental performance, to make decisions.
What kind of service providers?
Well, right now, I'm doing more market research, but I'm going for either providers directly to larger manufacturers, the financial sector,
Providers of what?
like different types of services, utilities, it could be utilities, it could be marketers, it could be distributors.
I gotcha. That's why you're saying there's all these different people in there.
Right, because the service industry is a large void here.
I got it.
But everything that happens in the service industry is heavily dependent on the manufacturing industry. So I study the manufacturing industry because as we lose jobs each year in manufacturing, the service providers don't really have as much of an incentive.
Gotcha.
So that's the
So this is about supply chains and
Yes.
CSR and sustainability reports.
Exactly.
And what do you do?
The platform will allow management to be able to look at, they can store there'll be a lot of resources in there where they can store reports and things like that, so they can report to like carbon disclosure or EcoDesk at the end of the year, or as their providers.
Oh, so it's an annual sustainability report in a box.
Yes, but there's something better.
What?
That's actually amazing. It allows, because of where it's pulling information from, so we'll use, for example, like the Pacific Sustainability Index and like ISO standards, and we give them weights. And so it'll let them know kind of like where they may be falling behind. So kind of like a weather system almost in there so that managers can make decisions as well. So it's not just another ERM platform, it has that component. So that's what makes my business really stand out.
Well, the best thing you said in there was weather system monitoring.
It's like that, yeah.
Well, because that's something that I can get my head around even if I have no idea what an ERM platform is. Yes.
So Crystal, can I raise when we think about our business, we tend to think about its substantive value. Whenever we talk about our business, or whenever I hear all of you talk about your business, you're always talking about it substantively. But you made a great point with the Trump, Hillary Clinton, slide, is you have to think of this too in terms of what emotions. And just as a practical example, for those of you who are tuning into the debate, how many of you are tuning into it because of all the substantive policy discussion that's going to take place, versus how many of you are tuning into it to see what fireworks happen tonight? Right?
Yeah, I know my answer. I'm going to see WWE.
Pretty much. But that's the thing, when you think about your business, you have to look at it from both perspectives, the substantive policy side, but also, what powerful response are you trying to evoke by talking about what your company does or what your company, what problem that your company is trying to solve.
Exactly. I think that's a great comment. Yes?
Is there a difference in how much emphasis you place on emotion, as being the substance of what you're communicating, for a B2C business versus a B2B business?
Absolutely not. I do a lot of B2B, and this question comes up, we don't have to do that because we're talking to IT people or research directors or engineers. Those people laugh, they make jokes, they have culture, they are human beings just like anybody else. And they also operate in the B2B space. Even the most knowledgeable knowledge worker off the same motivators that consumers do. The old saw, you never got fired for hiring IBM. Well, who were these business decision makers who just decided to just throw it in there for IBM without bothering to take a business case up they didn't want to stick their neck out. Well, that's no different than the kid on the kickball field. So, I think you do it differently. Like you can't be a slap.
So you feel the motion, but in a
more professional way.
angle,
Yeah. Yes.
Whenever I think about starting a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
I try to describe what I think it is, that I'm providing value,
Mm-hmm.
and then I go and I talk to a potential customer, and they destroy that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what I find valuable may not be what they find valuable.
Exactly.
So one of the easiest things when you're writing a value proposition thing is to actually go out and talk to people And then they'll tell you what they value, and they use those words.
Exactly.
So if I go into a financial advisor's office and I'm talking about things that may apply to startups, they don't get pivot and all of that stuff, right? But they understand referrals and prospecting, which startups don't talk about.
Right.
So I have to use the words of the people that I'm dealing with. So everybody here, when you talk to your potential customers, they'll help you to develop your value proposition, because it doesn't matter what you value. You know, it matters what they value. So I always tell people, you know, if it doesn't matter what you're bringing to the table if I don't value what you're bringing to the table. So remember, that's what your customers are saying. That what are you dealing with my values versus trying to push your beliefs and values on me to tell me that something's important.
And the only thing I would push back on is if you have an insight or a passion for something that you believe, I mean, don't go all the way to Rocky Mountain Water, but you believe there's something there and you go test it with a few customers and they push back or they just aren't getting it. That doesn't mean you should change necessarily. It means you aren't serving it up right to them.
And I wasn't saying that they should change. I'm saying use their language.
Right.
Use the industry language of your customer, because they relate to that. That makes you relatable, even if your product sucks.
Exactly.
You seem like you understand them.
Well,
True.
another thing too that I might add is a lot of you are playing in the innovation space, right? And so, value proposition, when you're a business consultant, you have to do exactly what he said. You have to align your value with the needs of your value. But there are exceptions to every rule. One of those primary exceptions is Apple. Apple has a tendency to dictate value, what you should be valuing, because they dictate innovation in the space. So sometimes you have to realize there's going to be certain circumstances, and it's going to vary on each of your businesses, that the customer doesn't know what they should value.
Right.
In that case, you're going to be in a position where you're going to be dictating that more so than trying to align it.
Or you should value it even if they don't yet. For example, Apple was always into simple, beautiful design and simplicity and elegance back when computers were brown boxes that were ugly as hell, and they didn't care. They valued that and waited for the market to catch up to their aesthetic. Keep in touch, you guys.
Can we take one more question?
Oh yeah, who'd I miss?
I was just gonna ask you real quick, so I went ahead and filled it out based on, so you have no idea what my business is, but just thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh God.
So, for convenience stores, Kaizen Retail is the management app and analytical tool that enables every store employee to execute like the best employee by using real-time surveys, checklists, and retail-specific tools.
It's got good bones. It needs some pizzazz. Is it any convenience store?
Yeah.
Read it one more time.
Accessible market.
It's what?
That's our target market, our beachhead market is convenience stores.
Can you read it to me one more time?
So for convenience stores, Kaizen Retail is a management app and analytical tool that enables every store employee to execute like the best employee by using real-time surveys, checklists, and retail-specific tools.
I would focus on working on that, what it lets the employees do to execute like the best employee. That's a little fuzzy.
Okay.
Like if you can kick that up a notch. Like I read somewhere, it's harder to get a job at QT as a clerk than it is to get into Harvard because of their standards of what they want to deliver at the retail level. Is that true? You know the space.
Yeah.
In customer service. So that's what I would put in there as working language to be, the top 1% of QT clerks. You know, like if they all could be like that.
Yep.
So you don't have to be the guy at 7-Eleven going like, well, I can't pay that wage and, I'm a 7-Eleven. No, with this, you all of a sudden get.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay. Keep in touch, you guys. Here's my info.